Hello, I'm Jim, and welcome to Rallying in America, the Recce Podcast. This podcast is an exploration of a rich history, the stories and memories of those who made and make Rallying in America so great. Enjoy the show. Well, Jerry, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and let's start off with your photography and how far back you've been photographing motorsports.
Oh, geez. Well, what happened is I've been going to auto races since 1970. The first race that I went to go see was the Donnybrook Trans Am. And that's the thing is Trans Am back in that era was phenomenal.
Oh, I bet.
My dad, would take me up to Donnybrook on a frequent basis. And in 1972, he gave me one of his old cameras and a roll of film and just basically said, here you go. And, initially I started to take a few shots of the cars as they were going down the main straight, but I wasn't able to catch them. He says, well, you've got to pan with the cars. You have to move along with the cars and then press the shutter. So that was kind of my start. And then, thankfully, this was just a few years ago that my mom had moved out of her house and I thought all those negatives were gone. Well, Here they were all still in a box. So I've been just frantically scanning away over the past few years to try and put a lot of this stuff online.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, and speaking online, you have a website, and it's called comicozzie.com. So it's comicozzie.com, I believe.
Yes, correct.
Excellent. And you can go back and you can look at some of these events that you did. Looks like since about 1972.
Yeah, that's when it all started. And I've got at least something from each year in there. Mm-hmm. Not just rally, but also a lot of road racing. I do an annual antique car run that I shoot every year, and various car shows and stuff like that too. So, but mm-hmm. The main focus is road racing and rally.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And you've also, you do everything in between as well. There's, looks like you have a history with the International Ice Racing Association.
Yes, yeah. So Dad took me to my first ice race back in 1973, and that's when they used to run in St. Paul on Lake Phelan. And, it's like, okay, well, we're going to go see cars racing on ice. Who knows how it's going to be because it's going to be cold out. But mm-hmm. That's the thing is right about then was when everything just kind of kicked into gear with the series. And you had guys like, Jerry Hansen, who later became, multi-SECA winning racing driver. Peter Kitchak, who later raced in, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and, it's just a very famous Porsche driver, and just a number of other people, Bobby Archer, Tommy Archer, they all started, in that series at that time. And what happened is, eventually my brother Tim got into it. He started racing back in 1977. Okay. My brother Mike started 4 years later in 1981, and then I started in 1985. Yesterday was actually the 40th anniversary of the first event that I competed in, and that was in a Datsun 510.
And how old were you then?
I was 19 at the time.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so I was, and the thing is it was just absolutely terrifying because I'd only driven stick shift just briefly. My brother tried to show me once, and my brother Tim, kind of showed me the pattern and how to use the clutch and stuff like that when I was in pit lane. But I actually didn't start driving until I had gone out of pit lane
Oh,
during the
wow.
race. So yeah. But by the end of my stint, it was a 4 hour race, and I did the first stint. I was able to figure it out pretty well, and kept out of everyone's way. And we had a wet ignition problem, but
Okay.
we still wound up, I think, fifth out of seven cars in our category, and there was like
Oh,
40
yeah,
cars
okay.
on track at the time. So
How different is it driving on ice? I'm assuming you had studded tires, and so
yeah,
it must have been
yeah, we
a
had
different experience for sure.
it. Yeah, it is, and it's very similar to driving on gravel. You've got
Hmm.
a little bit better bite out of the corners, but um, back then the rear drive cars and the front drive cars would have different lines going into the corner. So sometimes the lines would just kind of cross over going into the corners and coming out of the corners. By the end of a 3 hour race, your car was just dancing around through the corners,
Oh, wow.
and the ice would get dished out by about a good foot in some areas. So, but the last event that I ran was in 2004. And that was the last time they ran the St. Paul Winter Carnival race.
Oh, okay. Very cool. So, other than the ice racing, did you progress into any other type of racing from
I,
there?
I, I did do I did do some TSD rallies back in the 80s, just locally.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never actually competed in rally. I did do a number of seasons of autocrossing and solo too, with Land Lakes Region SCCA,
Okay.
and in 1997 took home the SCCA Solo 2 Driver of the Year. I,
Oh,
I
awesome.
won, yeah, I won all of the H stock races that year, and it was just with a Mazda 323, bone stock, but just driving to the absolute limit with that poor little car.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
So then, when did you start getting into some of the photographing some of the ARA rallies, or even the if you did SCCA events, or even the NASA events? When did you start
sure.
getting into those?
And actually, I've shot for five different rally organizations now: SECA,
Mm.
uh, Rally America, the Max Attack series, which was kind of its own little series back in the mid early 2000s, and
Okay.
then NASA Rally Sport, and then also ARA. But I got started back in 1986, and this is kind of a funny story because I had no idea what to expect. I literally drove up to the event with $50 in my pocket, crashed on someone's floor, and only brought one roll of film with me.
Oh, wow.
And and I just got hooked. I the the first stage of the day was a fairground stage, and the cars were zipping around
Mm.
this little fairground area up in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. And then later on that afternoon was the actual first stage of the day. And they said John Buffum would be coming down the road. Be careful because he's going to be going pretty fast. And I figured this is a two track road.
Yeah, right.
There's no way he's going to be going faster than 50, 60 miles per hour. And I was standing right by the side of the road, and um, before I heard the car, there was actually a helicopter that was flying above Buffum's car, and he came down the road, and he was doing in excess of 100 miles per hour. So scared the absolute crap out of me.
I
But
bet.
yeah, that was when I was hooked on the sport at that point.
Yeah, well, thank God for digital now, right? You don't have to carry
Yes, exactly.
rolls of film, or
Right.
worry about whether or not you got the shot, or if there's a problem with processing, etc.
Yes, exactly.
So more recently, I've looked at some of your photos. They're amazing, from like
Thanks.
LSPR, Lake Superior
Yeah.
Performance Rally. It's a beautiful time of year there,
Yeah.
and those photos are incredible. Of course, with all the leaves changing and everything over in
Yeah,
Michigan. Those photos are spectacular. And I
thank you.
really got into looking at those. And in just a few days, you're going to be headed to Snowdrift, correct?
Yes, I am so ready to get out of town.
I bet.
Yeah, my friend John and I were planning on leaving probably at about 10 o'clock on Wednesday night, and we're just going to drive overnight like we did last year,
Hmm.
and go out, scout all the stages on Thursday morning, and try to find some decent photo angles. This will be, I think, the eighth time that I've shot the event. I
Oh,
shot it
wow.
every
Okay.
year. Yeah, I shot it a bunch back in the early 2000s, before I had kids, and then after kids, there was this long break where there's just no way I could make it over there, and
Oh,
I
I
I
know how that
returned.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, I returned last year, and one of the spots that's one of my favorites. They were using it as a stage, and I said, "Okay, John, we're going to that spot. I know exactly where that is, and yeah, I love that spot."
Perfect. So, yeah. So I imagine going for 8 years, you're really going to know the best places for
Yeah,
some good shots. Now, do you
yeah.
ever venture into where they have all the bonfires, or you pretty much steer clear of some of that?
Um, I did shoot on Bonfire Alley last year,
Hmm.
but the end that we were at was the northern part, and there were a few small bonfires that were, at the northern end of the stage. There's a lot of houses up there, but there was one spot where a family and said, "Hey, if you want to park your car here, that's fine. Just,
Hmm.
go ahead." And it was great because they were offering us free venison and use the bathroom or whatever. So
Oh, perfect. Nice.
um, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be shooting Bonfire Alley in the main area because it is so congested there,
Is it? Okay.
and trying to hit any stages before that, and then the stage that's immediately after, it's tough. So we'll probably try and figure that out either Thursday or Friday of next week, of this week, and just we're just going to kind of wing it.
Yeah, I imagine, you got to play it by ear somewhat when you get
Yeah,
there. Yeah. So after Snowdrift, what rallies are you planning on attending?
definitely. I plan on going to Headwaters. That
Okay.
runs on a lot of the same stages as Ojibwe Forest Rally. It's up in the Paul Bunyan State Forest, just near Akeley, so it's right in Lake Country, and it's always beautiful up there at that time of the year because the leaves are just starting to come out, the wildflowers are just starting to sprout out of the ground,
Nice.
and then you got the wood ticks too. But no, it's always an enjoyable, just a really nice, enjoyable event because it's usually 50, 60 degrees at that time.
Hmm.
You don't have a lot of dust, and you get about 20 cars on average.
Okay.
Um, then after that, probably going to shoot the Hardwood Cup Rally, which is a NASA Rally Sport event. That's up in the UP. I'm definitely
Okay.
going to do a Ojibwe Forest Rally in August. That's one of my favorites. LSPR, which is up in the UP in
Right, right.
October, and then Namaji Trail, which is just another small event that's in northern Minnesota, usually right about the time that the snow starts flying.
Okay.
So it's about six events this year is that's what I'm planning on primarily.
Okay, nice. And so you're anxious. You got some cabin fever here, and
Yes,
you want to get out and get doing some shooting. So it's only a couple months, right, in between Snowdrift and that last one you had mentioned.
yeah. Headwaters is right roughly about mid-May,
Okay.
but I also do uh, some ice racing photography. I may go to one of those ones in February. I haven't decided yet. It all depends upon weather and whether or not the ice stays thick enough.
Okay.
We're kind of in a warm spell right now, so when you start getting up into the 40s and 50s temperature wise, the ice tends to not really stay good for racing on. So
Right, right.
we'll just have to kind of play that one by ear.
Okay, very cool. So, you mentioned your brothers were into racing.
Yeah.
Growing up. Now, your son, does he have any interest in, or any of your kids' interest in rallying or racing?
Well, I've got a son who's 20 years old. He's on the autism spectrum.
Hmm.
He comes along with me to a lot of the events. As far as driving, we did have him tested for driving, and they basically said, yeah, he's probably never
Okay.
going to be driving. So, my daughter, for a while, she loved it initially, but eventually she just kind of said, well, I'll just let you and Reese go off and do
Yeah.
your own thing, and you can have your weekends together. So,
Okay.
but my
Very cool.
wife, my wife initially, when we met, we went out to like STPR, Maine. We flew down to Prescott one year. Um, we were doing a bunch of the series, but after kids is kind of like, well, I'm just going to stay here and take care of the kids. So
Right. Yeah.
she still has a little bit of interest in it, but not as much as the first few years that we were still dating and married.
Right. 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 Yep. Oh, I get it. And now that my kids are older and soon out of the house, hopefully, my wife and I can get traveling and go to a lot of these races
Right.
coming up soon. So
And
it'll be
that and
a
that's
lot of
kind of
fun.
where and that's kind of where I'm at now. I mean, now that my kids are 18 and 19, I can resume a lot of the stuff that I was doing. I mean, back between 1997 to about 2004, yeah, I was doing, five, six, seven pro rallies a year.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
And then on top of that, I was also writing and photographing for Dusty Times magazine.
Okay.
And I would submit an article, six or seven type double space pages, and then submit it off to Dusty Times magazine so that it would be in there like in the next month or two for whenever their issues came out.
Right.
But Dusty Times started getting away from rally um, right about 2009 2010.
Hmm.
There were several of us that were contributing, but um, the owner at the time, he was starting to get up there in years, and he was
Okay.
doing primarily um, a lot more of the California, Southwest, Baja type stuff.
Oh, I see.
But his wife, who had passed away back in the mid '90s, she was really big into rally. So he wanted to try and keep the whole rally thing going,
Hmm.
but in the end, it just kind of fizzled off.
Yeah. Well, you're in a good location in Minnesota. You've got a lot
Hmm.
of rallies there in the upper Midwest and
Yes.
Michigan. So you're kind of a sweet spot there for a lot of action.
Yeah, and that's why I really like this area. The competition level, especially amongst the regional guys,
Hmm.
you know, even though you might be to paying attention to, Subaru and the guys that are showing up with, Ford Fiesta Rally 3s or, Hyundai Rally 3 cars or whatever.
Right.
The thing is watch the guys that are running like about, that come through and they're like 15 through about 30 in the pack.
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of regional guys and they just battle tooth and nail, and it's
Yeah.
really gotten good.
Yeah. I've gotten to know a local, sort of my local team here, and they go to STPR, and they're a lot of fun to watch because
Yeah.
they're flat out, and man, they just absolutely love it.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's fun to watch them, and
Yeah.
and I love, and I've talked about this before, how great it is to be able to talk to everyone at these rallies. Like you go to the park expose and you can meet everyone and chat with everyone. It's just a very approachable sport in the aspect of the drivers and co-drivers.
and, and I really have to agree. I mean, I've I've shot everything from IndyCar to IMSA, Trans Am,
Mm.
you name it. But just the whole camaraderie of the whole rally community. It's just it even though it's spread across the U.S., it's still a very small community.
Yeah.
And it seems like so many people know someone else in the rally community. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there have been times where I've been down. I was down in Arizona with my wife, and we saw someone that we saw someone that had something rally related. It's like, oh, so and so. Yeah, we know him.
Yeah.
It's just it's weird.
Yeah. Well, it's everyone I have on the podcast or that I've had since I started a couple months ago. They're always, oh, you need to talk to this person, you need to talk
Right.
to that person. And that's how I got your name is my very
Yeah.
first podcast. Andrew, he said, oh, you should probably talk to Jerry.
Yeah.
He's very knowledgeable about the sport and has been, involved for quite a long time. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's the thing is a lot of people are like, well, you're kind of like the sport's unofficial historian,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of by default.
Yeah.
But what happened is probably around 10 years ago, because I'm on Facebook and there's a lot of various racing groups that I'm a part of,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a SECA Can-Am, Trans Am, Formula Atlantic, IndyCar, kart, you name it. But there was not anything related to rally history. So
Yeah.
I decided, okay, now it's time to come up with something. And I talked to a few other friends, and I said, let's do an SECA Pro Rally History page, and just have it go from like about 1973 when SECA, you know, basically started things
Mm-hmm.
with rally. I mean, even though rally went back even further, um, as far as performance rally from about 1973 up to 2004, which is when SECA handed the reins over to Rally America.
Mm-hmm.
So I started this group, and I I figured, okay, we're probably going to get 200, maybe 300 people, and it's no, there's several thousand people on there.
Yeah.
And then because I've been around the sport for a long time, Greg Drozd, who runs North America Rally, said, "Hey, do you want to be an admin to our group as well?" So I'm also an
Right.
admin on North America Rally, just to you know, kind of a gatekeeper and making sure that the riffraff stays out, and
Right.
so yeah, I do a lot of stuff, and then I also have a page called I can't remember offhand, but it's something like old rally cars. Where are they now?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh, cool.
so I've got that page, and I've every once in a while someone will say, well, this car showed up in a junkyard. Do you have any history on it? And
Oh,
I'll
okay.
say, oh yeah, I recognize that car. It ran back in the mid 1990s out in the Pennsylvania area. And what about this old Mazda 323 GTX? Oh
Oh, yeah.
wow, that
Okay.
that one's been gone for that one hasn't raced in 25 years. I know exactly which car that is.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been doing a lot of that too, just to kind of bring up the old history on some of these cars, or say, hey, this car is up for sale. Anyone interested?
Right. Yeah, so I hear all kinds of stories about like full size Cadillac that I guess ran in a rally one time.
Yeah, there
Um,
was, the infamous Cadillac, which was, I think, an early 70s Cadillac that Chad Dykes ran out in the West Coast. And I think the car only did like two or three rallies, but
oh, okay.
yep, he somehow put a cage in it and ran it.
Wow,
So
that's crazy.
yeah.
Do you foresee with all this rally history? Do you foresee some one unified body that would handle sort of the rally archives? Somebody like the International Motorsport Research Center in New York, or somebody, or do you think
See,
it'll
and
be
and,
spread
and,
out?
and I know a lot of stuff has been sent out there.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to go out to Watkins Glen and just browse the archives, not just for rally stuff, but just
Yeah.
for racing history too. But I've got two, actually it's going to be three now, four-drawer cabinets of just nothing but racing, rally, and ice racing history.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I've just been hanging on to a lot of this stuff. So, and it's weird because I've had people say, "Hey, I bought this car which supposedly raced between 1970 to 1976, and do you have any information in regard to any results, any race results or qualifying, anything?" Right. And yeah, I actually have been able to dig up some stuff.
Oh, wow.
I've got a guy that apparently bought an old Mustang and ran a sedan with it back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And it originally started out as an autocross car, was built into an A sedan car, and I've been finding a little bit of information, but not as much as I wanted to. But
okay.
Hey, it's a start.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I have a history background just because I've worked in museums and exhibits. So I've always interested in looking at some of that old, just memorabilia and things from the rallies. Because I know there's a lot of folks out there that just have, bankers boxes full of stuff that are just sitting there, and it'd be
right
a lot of fun to be able to share that somehow and go through
and
it.
and it's funny you mentioned that because about a year and a half ago, well, actually even longer than that, but for about the past 3 years, Sharon West, her husband was Harvey West,
Mm-hmm.
who was, he just has all this huge history of Minnesota and Wisconsin-based road racing history. And she says, "I don't know what to do with it. Harvey's gone. Do you want it?" "Sure."
Wow.
So she gave me all of these old 8mm, film reels, and I started digitizing them all. And I'm just like, "You've got to be kidding! This is
so much fun to watch those."
Yeah, and there's stuff. There's old Can-Am races from the 60s and 70s at Elkhart Lake. There's Formula One races from Watkins Glen.
Wow.
Old sprint car races from the Minnesota State Fair. And then she says, "Well, okay, I've got 4 boxes full of old stuff. Do you want it?" Again, It was just like all these old programs from Road America from the 60s, and there was like autographs that were like scattered, on the programs. Yeah. And I'm just like, holy cow! So she passed away just over a year ago, and I mean, but I'm going through these boxes just bit by bit, and I'm just like, holy cow! This is just unreal that she kept all this stuff.
Oh, it is.
So
thank God that they did. Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. Yeah. Because I mean, especially with a lot of stuff, I mean, all it takes is just for someone to say, "Well, there's all this old racing stuff. Well, we'll just pitch it." And it's just like, holy cow! I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd hate to see that kind of stuff get thrown out, or have their kids just not know what to do with it, and just and just forget about it, So that's pretty incredible. Yeah. And back to that North America Rally page on Facebook, they're up to 24,000 members now.
Wow. Wow.
According to right now, 24,000 members. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And it's a lot bigger than you'd think, because I just started getting back into rally back in maybe 2021 or in 2022. I grew up in the 80s, so I always loved Group B and watching. My cousin would always get all the magazines and everything and share them with me.
Yeah, and that's the way I was too. I mean, I grew up watching, every single, ESPN, overhead shots of Group B cars going down the roads in the 80s. I used to go to a friend's house, and we would record it and then just watch it over and over again. So yeah. I mean, I can totally relate. I did the exact same thing.
Oh yeah, And I have arguments with a friend of mine about how tough rally drivers are versus other race car drivers. I think they're the
Yeah.
toughest. They have the most fortitude, I guess is the best way to say it, you know?
And it's pretty interesting you mentioned that because I just was watching something about, Formula One drivers being strapped in and going down a stage road with some of these, top WRC drivers
Right.
nowadays. And I can't remember who the first driver was, but he just basically got to the end of the stage and says, "Okay, I'm done. I'm out." And
Yeah.
then the other driver was Mika Hakkinen, and he went down the stage and back, and he says, "Okay, that was fun, but I'm not doing that again."
Oh, yeah.
So
And that's strange coming from someone from, a Scandinavian country. You'd think that
yeah,
they would love that. But
yeah.
yeah, it is. It's a different breed. Those guys and gals are just incredible.
What was one thing I just wanted to add here too is back in 1999 when Ford, Colin McRae was racing for Ford
Hmm.
in the WRC. His teammate at the time was Thomas Radstrom, and a friend of mine and we were both running Special Stage, specialstage.com at the time,
Hmm.
and he said, "I got an invite from Ford in Detroit that said that Thomas Radstrom is going to be, showing up with a rally car. Did you want to come out, go out there and like fly out and fly back in one day?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." So we went out there, and there was only about probably not even 20 reporters. I want to say like maybe 12 or 15.
Wow.
And and we went. It was at Detroit's Proving Grounds, and Radstrom was doing hot laps around, this track, going around cones and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Well, each person got to do, a couple of laps with Radstrom, strapped in, and I was one of those people, and it was just like, holy cow!
Wow.
It's just, I mean, yeah, it's like a whole nother breed of driving when you're actually strapped in with someone that is. And I asked him, I said, "How many days out of the year do you practice?" And he said, "About 300."
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So yeah, I mean that's 300 days out of a year, but I mean, and he was one of the top drivers at that time. I mean, he was,
Yeah. Right.
he had run with Toyota before he went to Ford, and yeah, just an incredible driver,
Right.
and he was just very very calm, just like an average guy.
Hmm. Pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun. Fun. Those stories are incredible. Fun to listen to.
Oh yeah.
So, lastly, I just wanted to ask, what do you think the future holds for rally here in America, and your thoughts on a possible WRC return?
Well, here's my thing. SEC tried to bring in Cherokee Trails as a WRC event. They had FIA people come down,
Hmm.
check out the event. It was, an FIA sanctioned event. Um, and the rules were super cool. Chattanooga I mean, they rolled out the red carpet and they said, "This is great." But the problem is the locals weren't behind it.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was really strange. Yeah, because there was one stage where I wanted to try and make a shortcut to get to another stage, and there was actually a sheriff that was standing in the road, and he says, "You don't want to go down there. Crazy Mary lives down there about a mile away, and she will shoot you."
Oh my
So I
word.
said, "Okay, I'm not doing that."
Yeah. Good idea.
um, yeah, and, and
Wow.
and for a sheriff to actually be blocking off the road is just down there is weird. But
Yeah.
and I know that they've really tried with this Rally Tennessee thing. I just, man, I mean, I don't know if they can really pull it off because unless
Hmm.
you get involvement with someone experienced at putting on an event that large, I mean, why they aren't linking up with ARA to try to do this? Um, because it sounds like they're just trying to do it single-handedly, like, oh, we're going to, put on this, and, we got the city of Chattanooga behind us.
Right.
I just, I honestly, I don't foresee it happening.
Yeah.
I would tend to think that if you wanted to put on, an FIA event, your two really biggest cities where you could do one is Marquette, possibly, or Seattle.
Oh, right. Okay.
But the biggest thing is you're going to need a lot of workers. You're going to need a lot of hotels.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. But yeah, I don't know. But as far as rally and where it is right now compared to where it's been, I think we're back on the upswing, which is good. When I got into rally, it was 1986. We still had, 3 Group B cars that were running here regularly. I mean, Buffum had his Quattro, Roddy Millen had his RX-7, John Woodner had his Peugeot, and then, you still had like about 30 or 40 cars that were running behind them. But yeah, I mean, it was such a cool time right then. After Group B had died off, it took a few years for things to kind of get back up to where it was. But like the mid 90s, you had the battles between Paul Schwinner, Henry Joy, and Carl Merrill. And those battles were just nuts. I mean, they were so close, all 3 of those cars. I mean, Schwinner either had his Audi, and then he made the jump over to Hyundai in the late 90s. Henry Joy started out with an Eclipse, switched over to a Mitsubishi Evo 2. Carl Merrill had all of his Ford Escort RSs. And boy, I mean, they were just so close time-wise. Yeah. And then after Merrill's death, he had a heart attack behind the wheel at Prescott Forest Rally in 1997.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wait, no, 1998. Henry Joy kind of went off and left the series. It was kind of on a decline at that point. But Kurt Spitzner came in and was helping the SEC. He really got the ball rolling. So about 2000 to 2003, wow. I mean, you had fields of 70, 80 cars. I remember Maine Forest Rally one year almost had 125 cars entered.
Wow.
And then there were a number of incidents that happened. There was one where a driver and co-driver were killed in 2003. There was also a driver that passed away at a small regional event. And then I think there was also a situation where you had 2 people that were on the outside of a corner, and a car had hit the inside berm of one corner and then just kind of ricocheted off, and sadly took the lives of 2 spectators.
Wow.
But there, it was kind of a dark era for SCCA at that point. Oh, okay. And the next year, SCCA said, well, we're kind of walking away from Rally. So Rally America kind of took over the reins at that point.
Okay.
That was in 2004, 2005. Rally America, right around about 2007, that again was a really, really good era. I mean, you had, you had you had a number of factory teams that were coming back. You had the hype behind Travis Pastrana, Ken Block, Tanner Faust, just a number of drivers, and it was really, really close again. But by about 2010, I think the X Games. What happened is X Games was always right around about August. So they shortened the series so that the cars only ran from about February to August, and then the remaining rounds, like Ojibwe, Colorado, LSPR, those were just regional events, that really took the steam out of the series. Yeah. But right now, with all the, I mean, you've got a number of teams that are starting to get Rally 3 cars. I know that there's going to be a Renault Rally 3 car that's going to be showing up next weekend at Snowdrift.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's
and then I know that Roberto Iglesias said that he was going to be switching to an RC2 car for this year as well. I'm guessing that more than likely we've been seeing a number of teams coming over from Ireland and running over here.
right.
So, yeah, I mean, at this point, I still think that Brandon Semenuk has the best equipment, but there's other teams that are going to start inching their way up to, the upper end. So, Snowdrift next weekend, I mean, there's only maybe about 6 or 7 cars that are at the pointy end of the field, but I think that by the midpoint of the season, we could probably be seeing about a dozen cars.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's good. It should be fun. Yeah, there's a lot of speculation too about who's driving what and for whom, and so.
Right.
But it should be an interesting year for sure. So, well, Jerry, we could probably go on for forever.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule and taking the time to chat. And then we'll have to touch base with you again a little bit later in the season to see how things are going and what you've seen out there.
Yeah, well, this was really fun, and I mean, I had no idea what to expect. I mean, this is the first podcast I've ever done. So
okay, fantastic. Yeah. I don't know what to expect either. I try not to over prepare. I kind of go in kind of cold turkey and just let it go the way it needs to go. So yeah, again, I really appreciate it. And we didn't even have a chance to talk about the ruby slippers or anything. That were buried next to your garage, I guess.
Yeah, my next door neighbor had the ruby slippers from the Wizard of Oz buried basically 10 feet from my garage. So yeah, that's a whole nother story. But yes.
Was it in a flower bed or something, or?
Yeah. Basically, he had like tomato plants and stuff like that, and it was just right next to the garage, not 10 feet away from me.
So the scarecrow didn't give it away. It would have been funny if you had a scarecrow sitting on top of it.
Yeah.
But, so. But again, thanks a lot, and I'll definitely
thank you. You're welcome.
We'll stay in touch. If you'd like to be on the podcast, you can email me, jim@jimboothdesigns.com, or message me through Facebook at Rallying in America, the Recce Podcast, or Instagram, rallying_in_America. Special thanks to our sponsor for this episode, Brady Instruments, pro-grade, handmade, professional fuel hydrometers. Visit bradyinstruments.com for all of your fuel testing needs. And remember, don't be a fool. Check your fuel. Thanks to Toontank and the artist Nuclear Wave and their song In Drive for the podcast theme music.